Hi everyone. In this tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to make this bracket to the specifications provided in a document called the Simple Bracket Drawing. I will attach a link to this PDF so that you can follow the exact specifications, but you can also simply follow along and you'll learn all that you need to know about how to create this from start to finish. What we're going to do first is we're going to create one base platform, then we're going to extrude up, and then we're going to create the back part, and then we'll finish by adding the holes and the details. So let's get started. I'm going to create a new design. If you're starting from scratch, you should have a new design already set up. And then I always start by creating a sketch, and this time it'll be on the ground plane. Now, you're going to want to refer to that bracket to figure out how big that base rectangle piece is going to be. It gives us some hints that this should be 75 long, and then it starts to curve out this way. This creates a circle, so we're going to create first a rectangle that's 75 long. We're going to also create another rectangle that's only 5 wide, and then the rectangle's height here, it tells us, is 50. So we're going to go 75 by 50. Create that first rectangle. So we go here and we adjust. Oh yeah, one other thing is my document settings. So you might notice that if yours is set to inches, you're going to want to change that for this to millimeters because that's the dimension, that's the units we're going to be using. You simply go up to document settings here, and then you have the option to press change active units and choose millimeters. Now I'm ready. So I'm going to create from the corner of the center point, and I can actually just click and then let go. I'm not dragging my mouse, I just click and let go, and then by moving the mouse, I can now specify the size. But before I click again, all I'm going to do is type, and I know that it needs to be 75 long, and I press tab to switch to this one, and then I know it needs to be 50. And so then it's all set, press enter, and now these are constrained. I cannot actually grab this and move it anymore. If I wanted to change it, I'd have to double click here and type a new amount, and that's the only way I can change this dimension. So 75, done. Now I'm going to create one more rectangle, so this is the 2-point rectangle tool. I'm going to create it from the corner again. I'm going to create it this way, and it's going to be 5 by 50. So I'm going to type 5 here, and type 50 here, and press enter. So now I've created 2 rectangles. This is going to be the back, this is going to be the base. Now, the next part is that curve, and that is actually, like I said, a circle. And you might be wondering, well, what is the diameter or radius of this circle that I need to create? Well, you can kind of infer that by looking at the width of this entire bracket. The width of the bracket is going to be equal to the diameter of the circle. So when we use the circle which says center diameter circle, we use that one, and we move our mouse, and eventually it's going to go, and it has this triangle. That means that it is at the midpoint. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see. There's like a triangle icon. That means midpoint. So if I wait for that triangle to appear, and I make sure that the X is on, which means that it's following along the line, when I click, it's now constrained to the midpoint. I don't have to worry about whether or not it's centered. Then I press 50 to make sure that the diameter is correct, and then I press enter to confirm. Then I can grab this and move it out of there so I have a nice view of it. And that is basically the base of our design. But before we move on, I can add these other details. So I'm going to also add the circle and the square because they're all part of the same base platform. And that'll save me a lot of time later because once they're done, I don't have to go in and do another step to add them. So first of all, we need to figure out where is the circle piece. That's going to be 35 from the back, and once again centered in the middle. And then the square is 40 from the circle's center and 20 from the edge. So you could use either of these measurements to figure it out. And it's also centered. And they both have the same, well, the diameter of the circle and the width of the square are 10. So this is pretty straightforward. What we're going to do is start by creating the circle. We know that it would be exactly at the center, which would be 25 from one end. And I'm going to create it and choose 10. But how do I make sure that it's exactly in the right spot? Well, what I can do is I can use a dimension tool, and I know that it's going to be from the back 35, and then 25 makes it in the middle. So I click the dimension tool, I click the center of the circle, then I click this edge, and I make sure that this says 25. Enter. Now I know that this distance from this edge to the center of the circle is 25. Then I do the same thing from the center of the circle to the back edge. That is now, right now, set to 25, but it actually should be 35. Press enter. Now we'll double check that we got that correct. So we go back to the drawing, 35 and 25. Perfect. Then the last step is that rectangle. So I need to create a rectangle that is exactly 40 from the center of this to this edge of the rectangle. And then the rectangle itself is 10, and then it's 20 from there. Now, what I could do is I could try to get a sense of how long this is by measuring before I even do anything. So I click here to here, and this is 45. So if you're savvy, you might realize that the distance from this point to this point is 45. The rectangle is 10 wide on each side, which means that this center point is actually the center point of the rectangle, per se. So, in this particular circumstance, I could use something called the center rectangle, which is this one. This one, I choose from the Create options, go to Rectangle, and choose Center Rectangle. Then from here, I can click, and I click the center point of the circle. Then from here, I type 10 and 10, and then enter. And now, the distance, if I'm not sure, I can double check this distance from this center point to this. And now I can see that it's 40. It's going to tell me that this is a driven dimension, which means that it's already constrained to that size. I can't use this, I can't change this dimension, but it is useful to know that this is 40. And then I could create another driven dimension from this to the edge if I wanted to. It's a bit tricky to do that unless I'm in the drawing view, because this is a tangent edge. But anyway, you get the idea. We know that this is correct, that this is the right size as per the drawing. Now I've basically created everything. This line is confusing, perhaps, if you look at it from this top view only. But if you realize this line is actually an angled slope. And if you look in this, it tells us that it is something called a chamfer, which is 10 millimeter chamfer. Don't worry about that right now. We'll get to it in a minute, in a few minutes. Right now, we just double check 35, 40, 10, 20. We're good. This is done there. So we're ready to actually finish this sketch. We'll press finish here. Before we move on, we should save. So we press save. We're going to choose a location for this. Now, if you haven't already done so, what you should do is actually create a project to put all of these practice assignments, because there's going to be more. Press new project, call it dimension drawing practices, and then in here, I already have one called dimension drawing exercises, but same difference. And then from here, we call this simple bracket 1. Save. And so now, if I go over here on the left, I open up this, and I go to I can find it in Dimension Drawing Practices. And then in here, I have my simple bracket. All I have right now is a 2D view, which is fine. Next, we're going to create the vertical part of this, make it into a 3D object. So the question is, how thick is it? Well, do we have any information that tells us? Where do we see? Let's look around. Let's see. Over here, 5. And so we can see that the thickness here and the thickness here are the same, so it's kind of a almost symmetrical design. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this. Either way, you can select first. So we're going to select the faces that we want to include. So I hold Shift, click on the things that I want. This, and this. Then what I do is I press Extrude. And then I choose to go up 3, 4, 5. Then I can make sure it says New Body for now. Press OK. That's now created our first flat, solid part. Then there's a trick here. I'm doing this in a way that you're learning a few little tricks. One of those tricks is we've already set ourselves up for the next part, which is in the first sketch we made. But Fusion 360 doesn't like you using one sketch to do two things. For some reason, they don't like that. In order to enable it, you have to turn Sketch on again. Now I can see the sketch that I had made before. It kind of hid itself because it thought that you didn't like seeing it anymore. But we're not done with it, so we're going to keep using it. We're going to do the same sketch, because remember we made that extra little bit here? That's going to be for the up part. So we're going to use another extrusion, but the question is, how tall is it going to be? It tells us here that this is 95, but the thickness is 5, which means 95 plus 5, that's 100, so we're going to go up 100. And you can even type 100 here. Now before you press anything though, double check that it says join in the operation. What that means is it's going to join this to the rest of the object that we've already made. So press OK. Now this is all one piece. And we're almost done. We're very close. We now have the fun details. We need to add a chamfer. Let's do that, and then we're going to see if there's anything else. So to add a chamfer, that's going to be in the Modify section. So in Modify, there's a few different really funky techniques you can use, but you will mostly be using the fillet and chamfers. So chamfer is the one we're going to do today. Well, actually, we're going to do both. We're going to do chamfer first. We click chamfer. Now we need to choose an edge. So we choose this edge, and we can pull it, and we can chamfer like crazy if we wanted. But at a certain point, it doesn't like it anymore. And you can see it gives us a bit of an error in the bottom here. If it gives you an error, then listen and don't fight it. You'll have to do a different technique to get what you want. But what we need to know is how much to chamfer it. Well, in the design, it says chamfer 10 millimeters. Therefore, over here, we make sure that the chamfer was 10. Now, if you were in the middle of it, and you went and checked, and then you realized, uh-oh, I wasn't sure how big I made it, you can always go down to the bottom here. This is your timeline. Your timeline has all the different techniques that you've used so far. So I see here that I have a chamfer. I can right-click and go Edit Feature. From here, I can see that it is in fact 10 millimeters. Press OK. And now I verify 10 millimeters. Good. I did it. Now we just have to see if there's anything else left. And now you can, in fact, turn off this sketch if you don't like it, like looking at it. It kind of looks like a basketball like court a little bit, but it's kind of fun. Anyway, you have this, and next you're going to check, okay, is there anything else that I need? Let's look here and see if there's any other details. For a lot of the assignments that you'll be doing in my drafting class, you will need to have a really keen attention to detail. I'm going to be adding a lot of smaller details that you could miss if you're not paying close attention. If we look at the 3D model here, and then we look at our 3D model, we can see there's some differences. So there's something missing. Can you tell? Let's see. It looks like there's something rounded around these edges. It's not quite the same as this. It's not completely circular, but it has some rounding on the corners. How can we do that? Well, we can use something called the fillet tool, but we need to know how much to do. So it says radius 10 here. So that is indicating how much of a curve these should have. So let's try putting that in and see what happens. So fillet, and we select this edge, and we also select this edge. You don't even have to hold shift, you just click the edges. Then I'm going to go down, 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 down 10. There we go. Press OK. Now that's actually looking pretty close. We have that. Now that's pretty great. So is there anything else that we're missing? I'm going to change it to this view. Do you see anything else that we might have missed? Let's see. Check this view. That looks pretty good. Check this view. That looks pretty good. Check this view. This looks... Wait a second. Okay, there's something going on down here. So here we see that there's actually a little bit of a curve happening on the bottom. This is sort of to simulate what would happen if they were to create this with metal. When you bend metal, it doesn't bend at exactly 90 degrees. There would be a bit of a curve to it. So to simulate that sort of effect, we're going to put a bend into this bracket. So to do that, we need a radius of 5, and we add another fillet here. So we click here, and we choose 5. We can type it, and then press enter, and there we go. We are completely done. And that is the correct process for modeling this from start to finish. Now, one last thing before I finish up for the day. Make sure you save, because now you actually have the object rather than the sketch. And save often. Make sure that you save every time you make a change, because over here you actually, in the project manager, or what they call the data panel, you have all the versions. The versions are every time you press the save button, it puts a new version, and if you make a mistake, you can go back to a previous version. It even has a timestamp so you can know when you did it. So that's really handy for tracking a larger project. The version history combined with the timeline on the bottom is really a godsend for when it comes to having issues. Now, the last thing that I wanted to show you is how I want you to hand this in. So what I want you to do is, when you hand it in, I want you to go all the way back to your timeline, where it's just this sketch, and I want you to press Edit Sketch. What I want to see is I want you to show me this. You need to take a screenshot of the dimensions that you used and how you set it up so that it's constrained. What I'm looking to see is that there is no blue lines. Now, what do I mean by that? Now, if I were to delete this dimension, now that circle is blue. Why is it blue? What the heck? What does that mean? Blue means that it's not fully constrained. I can't move it left and right, but I can still move it up and down, which, if I press Finish Sketch, and I go back all the way forward on my timeline, uh-oh, suddenly, this is in the wrong spot. What the heck? So, to fix that, I have to go back to the Edit Sketch, and I need to make sure that I have constrained it correctly. So I have to go here, and you have to press 25, enter. And that goes for everything. Now, you don't want something to be over-constrained, but you also don't want something to be under-constrained. You want it to be just right. It needs to have all the correct constraints. Now, for example, if I were to take this and delete this, now this entire rectangle is not constrained, which means I could theoretically grab this and make it longer, right? Which might be useful for certain circumstances. But if you wanted to be able to have like different variations of the design, there's a proper way to do that, and it's not doing this because just kind of fudging in the dimensions is not precise. So what you need to do is always make sure that what I want to see is that your sketch, when you hand it in, is black. All the lines should be dark, not blue. That means that you've properly constrained everything so that not only are they in the correct positions, they are put there intentionally, not just like by fluke. So make sure you have a screenshot of that. Make sure you also get a screenshot of your design. You can also include a render if you like. Choose a nice material, maybe like a metal color or something, and put it into your rendering tool to get like a nice effect out of it. And that's basically it. That's all for this assignment. It's a pretty simple one, but please make sure to post any comments you might have, any questions you might have, and obviously I'll be posting some more of these videos, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching.